The morning session of the DTAS conference here in Cumbernauld was quite astonishing and I think inspiring. It started with Alex Neil, who's the community's minister, who gave a speech, a performance really, without notes, bounding around the stage. And he was saying really that councils and services have to fit around communities, that you can't deliver outcomes onto people, you can't top down do that. And he was accepting, for example, in his own constituency, Airdrie and Shotts, one constituency, only part of probably about 3 councils when I think about it, but Airdrie and Shotts, 2 distinct communities, and they'd set up separate, different trusts to run each community. And place just kept coming through everything he was saying as a very important thing. So Colin Mayer from the Improvement Service, now that does sound like something from the X-Men, but actually this is at the heart of the government's approach to how public services should be delivered. Now, I mean, if anything, he was even more astonishing because so many of the ideas he was crunching together were quite astonishing, or at least astonishing to hear a bureaucrat say. He was talking about why it is that people delivering public services have always been so concerned about the minutiae of how they do things, rather than the evidence that they're doing any good at all in the real world. And he talked about the concept of a cosmic bureaucrat. He said this was the belief of people who work in councils, that there's something godlike personality out there, judging their every decision, wondering if they've ticked every box, wondering if every T has been crossed and I has been dotted. And somehow the belief in this cosmic bureaucrat, he said, was the reason why normal right-thinking people somehow still delivered completely inappropriate top-down services. So nearly everything he said was really quite astonishingly insightful and kind of on message for this group of people. And it left you with this question, well, if you know all this, if you know really that the community is the right size and unit and the powerhouse and the heart of everything that works, then why the heck have we still got the largest councils in Europe? I didn't ask that because, I'm a journalist and I'm just supposed to be sitting in the background taking notes and tweeting, but it's the question I would love to have asked, and perhaps we'll get that explored somewhat in this afternoon's session. Well, the conference ended, it's just finishing at the moment in the background, with an amazing session actually about the high street and its future. And a lot of people might think, what's that got to do with community trusts? Because they're so often involved with community buyouts or housing projects or keeping shops alive, but in rural areas. But the high street, that was the point of today. Earlier we heard a great speech by Judith Robertson from Oxfam, who was really questioning the idea that only putting money into retail in cities and towns actually ever trickles down to give you the social benefits you want. So she was very critical of Glasgow in particular and thought this might have something to do with the Glasgow effect, that so much money is always put into big retail, glitzy, glass-covered shopping centres, and that it doesn't work its way down to fix the fabric of society. So here we were talking about the high street. Now, it's very interesting the things that came out. Lots of people had tried to sort problems where, for example, in West Kilbride, something like 21 out of 45 shops were boarded up when they started about 10 years ago. That's a really typical situation for a lot of town centres and a huge problem. They started with one arts and crafts shop. They then bought some land to make the town centre more attractive. Other people came in, it grew like topsy, and they are now a success story, although it's very hard work. Other places had taken over a bakery when it was about to fold after being 110 years on the high street, and they managed after a lot of effort to find people who could actually bake to a professional standard and run it as a shop. We heard other examples of toilets being a huge problem, of there being no reason to go to a town centre, so that one man from a community trust was saying he felt like a kind of bit of a stranger, a weirdo, standing in a street corner in his own town, because after all, there was no reason for him to be there. Now, this is kind of the low ebb we've got to, and questions were raised too about, well, if you like, underperforming shops, shops that are just ticking over. They might be the only Reka shops in your area, and how can you say to someone, you need to kind of liven up if you're not prepared to take a shop on yourself? All of these are huge key issues, and in none of the examples of success did anyone get help from the council. In none of them did they start off with an entrepreneurial theme. They nearly all started off with arts, crafts, and involving people as their main object. And the message that seems to come crying out is, get something on the road, get the thing going that everyone has the most energy for, involve new people in different relationships, and you'll bring more and more functions in, and that will basically start a ball rolling. So that's a big challenge, I would say, to the government and to councils, because that's not the way currently anybody approaches high street development, is it? So, as usual at the DTAS conference, you come out with completely different discussions than you expected to have, very real ones, and very thought-provoking ones for the next year.